Today's episode is sponsored by Mahler Bros Golf. We all want to look good on the golf course, but it often comes at the expense of feeling good. Mahler Bros Golf has polos that look good and feel good. With their lightweight and stretchy material that hugs your body, you will feel cool while looking just as cool. Their polos are guaranteed to make you look better, but it's up to you to golf better. On a hot summer day on the golf course, there's no polo that you would rather wear than Mahler Bros Golf signature polos. Mahler Bros Golf has a large catalog of polos with designs for those who want a loud design and others for those that want a subtle and sleek looking design. They also have fun t-shirts, hats, tumblers, and so much more to make your golfing experience better. Use code BELLYUP at MahlerBros.com for 15% off. You know, when you're golfing, the sun's beating down and you want to take your shirt off because of the heat? These polos almost feel like you aren't wearing one at all. Are your polos getting outdated and dingy? Time to get new ones that will make you stand out on the course. You need Mahler Bros Golf signature polos. Their polos are a comfortable, slim fit that will make you look and feel good when you're golfing with the boys. It can be tough to get the perfect golf polo, but Mahler Bros provides a product that looks great, fits great, and is effective when that sun is beaten down. You can also grab these perfect polos at the Belly Up t-shirts collection by going to MahlerBros.com/BellyUp. Mahler Bros doesn't only have polos, they have really fun golf t-shirts that you can wear anywhere. Maybe like that family get-together. Maybe a date. Who knows, maybe even at a college basketball game where you're witnessing the theater. Make sure to let them know where you got that shirt and wear it proudly. Don't wait to try out your new favorite golf apparel. Upgrade your golf attire with Mahler Bros. Get 15% off at MahlerBros.com with code BELLYUP. That's spelled MahlerBros.com. Again, 15% off at MahlerBros.com with code BELLYUP. Turn heads on the course or wherever you wear Mahler Bros polos. Mahler Bros Golf. Look good, feel good, and of course, feel good, play good. You're listening to Theater and College Hoops. I am Subi, not riding solo. Taylor Daml back in the saddle. Say something, man. What's up?
Testing. Is this still on? Yeah. Is this thing on? Hello. Welcome.
It's good to have you back.
Welcome back, Taylor. Thanks, Taylor.
Yeah.
Sorry, look, I've already forgotten how to do this. Yeah.
You can do the Quinnen Williams bless you. what he sneezes, bless you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what you just did. But yeah, Taylor Daml back in the building. Very excited to have him. We're brought to you by Belly Up Media. Go download, subscribe, rate, and review us on whichever device it is that you use. In honor of Taylor being back, in honor of the Alaskan back here, your college hooper of the day is Trajan Langdon, not necessarily an obscure hooper, actually a great college basketball player at Duke and now doing big things in the front office for the New Orleans Pelicans. So there's that Alaskan connection, but also I was just simply scrolling through Twitter and I think I saw Jordan Hawkins's introductory press conference from Trajan Langdon. So I said, I'm too lazy to look up anyone more obscure. Trajan Langdon, college hooper of the day. Check out the website at theaterandcollegehoops.com and make sure to follow me at CBB Theater to find out where the feet is. You should also follow Taylor at Taylor Daml. Let's open the curtains. TD, welcome back, man. It is great to have you here. When was the last time you were on here? And I'm not trying to make fun of you. I'm not trying to poke at you. I genuinely want to know.
No, that's a good question. Thanks for the shout out, Trajan Langdon, Alaskan assassin, pride of East Anchorage High School as well. Who I think just won the state championship up there this last year over friend of the program, Colton Groudon's West Valley High School from Fairbanks, Alaska.
See, this is why we need you, man. I wouldn't have been able to pull that.
Well, also, you're talking to 5% of the people who care about Alaska high school basketball right here, right now. So, and actually you probably know 40% of the people who care about Alaska high school basketball. But no, I think it's been since probably early May. I think maybe I snuck another one in there somewhere, but it's been pretty much post college basketball season in a very major way. It's been a strange year or spring over here in Scottsdale, especially with the first kid on the way and all of that coming up here in September already. Someone better finish that nursery.
That's
I
you.
guess that's me. Yeah. So, but just work sucks. We all know that. It's been, yeah, it's still been a very
Blink
busy
182's
year.
been on tour on the
Uh,
West Coast, haven't they? Work sucks, you know.
yeah, I know. Yeah. Had a couple friends go to their concert here in Phoenix. A couple relatives and friends go to their concert in San Diego. I even did a backyard beers about Blink 182 as well.
That was
So,
really good.
hey, not gonna lie, I'm gonna pat myself on the back for that one. That was one of the better ones, I think. But been going up to Pine Top a lot. Spoiler alert, uh, the parental units may have procured a home up there as well. So that's going to be beneficial for everybody moving forward. But yeah, just trying to prep for becoming a dad here, one day at a time. Sue, I know. I mean, I've been listening to you, but what else has been happening outside of what we know about here on the podcast intros?
Not much. Not much. The air quality here in Chicago apparently is the worst in the world right now. Now, it's not going to last very long, but I will say, as being someone who's been to Delhi, it smells like Delhi outside right now. I think we're getting the Canada wildfires that New York was dealing with a couple weeks back. But yeah, Chicago right now has really bad air quality. I do think it's the worst in the world. And like I said, when I went outside, like people were wearing masks, and I don't think it had anything to do with COVID.
No. Yeah, as someone who's friends with multiple people who have been to Manitoba within the last couple of weeks, yes, you must have a robust friend group if you know multiple people that have been to Manitoba in the last couple of weeks. Yes, no rain there in the plains area of Canada at any point this summer. So it's been pretty dire straits up there. When you're getting 100+ degree weather in Canada, you know, and no rain. That's bad combo for especially for you, who has to deal with a lot of the issues with that. Let's call it. So
Well, I appreciate that, but shout out to our friendly folks and fine folks out in Canada. They're obviously going through it far worse than I am. Like I said, this is only temporary, but you're right. That is a bad combo. I mean, I'm trying to think of bad combos that we can relate to in college basketball. What are some combos that just didn't work? I don't know. Larry Eustace at Iowa State and alcohol slash partying. That was a bad combo with younger kids. Rick Pitino joke could be a little too easy, so I'm going to stay away from that. But anyone else on the court that you can think of?
I mean, how quickly do you want to get into the college basketball discussion? Because I think we have an apt example right here in front of us that we haven't really that you've mentioned, but we haven't really had a full discussion about, and that's what's a worse combo than Bob Huggins and microphones, maybe,
I
or
don't know.
steering
Just the
wheels?
2023 off season, right? In general.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, man. We can dive into it for sure. Let's do it. It is Huggins time. I talked a little bit about Huggins last week before we talked NBA draft with the Sideline Summit boys, but it's just so disappointing, man. And I think the biggest shock for me, Taylor, is that this just came tumbling down in a matter of months. Like if I told you the last time you were on this program that Bob Huggins was not going to be the coach at West Virginia, if we just take a look at some of the landscape of the Big 12, like 8 months ago, 9 months ago, and I told you that Chris Beard would not be at Texas, he'd be at Ole Miss. And I told you Mark Adams would not be at Texas Tech. And I told you Bob Huggins would not be at West Virginia. What would you say? But if we're focusing in on Huggins, right? It just seems as if he's led up everything to this point in his career perfectly. And I don't know, maybe Huggins does have some other ghosts in his closet or skeletons in his closet that I don't know about, but it just seems like in the matter of 2 months he's made as many career-ending mistakes.
Well, I mean, he did have a DUI when he was at Cincinnati.
Okay,
So, um,
so that's
and
not good.
didn't that have something to do with like, I mean, he's got a couple strip club stories in there, right? I think. I don't know. I mean, not that that's
Yeah,
illegal, not that that's
right.
illegal by any means,
And
but
look, I would say, like, from a moral standpoint, like DUI is obviously illegal, but from a moral standpoint, have whatever discussion you want, and then you could say it's not legal, not illegal. But then some people would say, hey, his homophobic slurs were not illegal either.
Right. I
But
think
that's way worse.
what would have been more surprising to me is not if you told me that Bob Huggins had been fired in the 6 weeks to 2 months since I've been on this program, but more so that Bob Huggins had multiple incidents that caused him to be fired. I think would have been, because neither of these individually, I think, were fireable offenses. Well, we saw that. We know that because the first one, which I think you are correct, significantly worse than the DUI. Not that I'm condoning DUIs, but like that's a much more common mistake than going on maybe like a talk radio show and using offensive terms and offending like 50% of the population essentially, if we add up some of these numbers. But yeah, I mean the fine, and well, it wasn't even really a fine. However, they worked it out. The salary situation was kind of unprecedented in a way. But then, yeah, to follow that up with a DUI, like if you would have just gotten a DUI this summer, people would have been like, well, Huggy Bear, strip clubs and DUIs, it's kind of his thing. West Virginia, nobody gives a shit in West Virginia, So, but yeah, you combine it with that. What it really kind of goes to show, unfortunately, and I don't mean to be like, I don't know, on a
Well, I don't know what
pedestal
your
or
thought is. What is it? Okay,
high horse this by any means, because I'm definitely not the person to high horse this. But if Bob Huggins and people of his ilk, 70-year-old dudes from West Virginia, let's just throw that out there, are using that type of language publicly, knowingly, assumedly soberly on a radio show, you can only imagine what his like pre, post, halftime practice rants are to his team. And so it's kind of surprising, I think, in a lot of ways that how much stuff really goes on behind the scenes of college basketball programs and the discussions that are having, really, that people kind of just pull the wool over their eyes intentionally to intentionally look away from this stuff, because if Bob Huggins is dropping this kind of language in a public interview, you can imagine what his private conversations must be like. I know that's probably like speculation, and I'm definitely not the person to like stand on the pedestal on and tell people or assume how other people act and stuff, but you can kind of infer that if he's talking like this publicly, you can only imagine how he berates some of his players. So
Yeah,
I don't know. Am I off base, you think, on that?
I don't know. I do think it's speculation, so I think it's fair for us and probably what we should be doing to call that out. It is complete speculation. We're just two idiots talking into a microphone. But I would say, so many people in the business love Bob Huggins, and they have said all the great things that he's done, even the media members. But I think everyone's agreed and come to terms with the fact that he couldn't do those two things that he did in the offseason and realistically expect to keep his job. It's almost like the opposite of a Draymond Green on the basketball court, right? So Draymond gets his first technical. He can do whatever the hell he wants. He will not get ejected. Okay. He will not be dismissed. Whereas Bob Huggins, he does get that first technical. And then he got the second technical, and it was like, you're gone, pal. So it's like the opposite of what Draymond Green does on the court. But I don't know. So I don't necessarily want to paint Huggins with this broad brush, but I think it is also fair to question what he's saying maybe behind closed doors. And I think it's very obvious. And I think none of us should be naive enough to think that these guys aren't polished in front of us, right? That we're getting the full 100% authentic coach, player, whomever in front of the microphone, because everyone has their flaws. But these are just two flaws that were way too severe to overcome. And it's kind of thrown West Virginia into a state of shock. I mean, here's another crazy headline for you. A year ago, how about this? A year ago, you show me this college basketball headline. Head coach of the Boston Celtics, Joe Mazzulla, and a few other West Virginia alums get on a Zoom call with the team to try and restore order. I don't know what the hell I'd be looking at. But did you see that?
How about West Virginia starting point guard Kirk Kriisa decides to stay with the team under coach under under coach Josh Eilert. Yeah, that would have been like 4 months ago. You'd be like, what?
After Taylor, let's layer it all on. After meeting on a Zoom call with Boston Celtics head coach Joe freaking Mazzulla.
Oh man, that's beautiful. What a time there in Morgantown. I want to know what your closest West Virginia alum thinks about all of this. So,
Oh, my dad. I was like, who? You know what? I always call my parents. I try to call my parents weekly on a Tuesday, and I'll ask them about this. But we have to catch up on Never Have I Ever first. Being my dad, that's the South Indian staple on Netflix. Mindy Kaling's show. Remember, I'm a heavy emphasis on South Indian because every Hollywood stuff you get about Indians is usually North Indians. Oh, you want like butter chicken, garlic naan, like all this stuff. There's some very South Indian tropes in Never Have I Ever, and that's good representation. But after that, I'll ask him about Huggy Bear there.
have you what's the other Danielle wanted me to ask you if you watch, is it the Sex Lives of College Girls? Isn't that another Mindy Kaling show?
I don't watch that. I think my wife Rachel watches that. It very
Okay.
well could be, though.
Okay. Great show.
Good
Never
theater?
Have I Ever, by the
Oh,
way.
okay.
No, never
Well,
have I
yeah.
ever. Never have I ever. We just got done watching, I think, was it the series finale?
Oh, well, was it season 4, episode 10? Because, yeah,
Yeah, whatever the last one was, right? I think.
that's it.
And going off what your dad had said, I also couldn't believe what David did. But I'm just gonna leave. I'm just gonna leave that at that for those who haven't watched it yet.
Yeah. Well,
So
you saw a lot of familiar Indian wedding things that happened, right? You've been
I
exposed to
felt
that.
I felt I felt right at home. Felt like it was April 14th. Is
Oh,
that what it
very
was?
close. April 15th. Thank you, though.
Tax day. Damn it. Yeah.
That's
Excuse
right.
me. Yeah, 2022. So a great day in all of our lives. But yeah, I do want to make sure that we know what your dad's thoughts are on his alma mater there, and what what the direction of their basketball program is going to be here.
Here's what he'll do. He'll just pivot it to something about Jeff Hostetler winning a Super Bowl as a West Virginia head coach, or I don't know. No, not head coach, quarterback, or it was like some Gator Bowl that Jeff Hostetler was in. I don't know, but he always just pivots to Jeff Hostetler and the football team. But yeah, I don't know. Wild times in Morgantown.
So where does this I mean, it's I don't want to say we don't know this quite yet, but what do you think what's the level of West Virginia basketball? Like, where do they rank? Like, do they just fall off a cliff from here, or are they a big enough name? Because they honestly really haven't been that good. Like, people really wanted them to be like good this last year. They kind of got hot for a little bit, and people really wanted to be like, oh no, they got a shot, but they really haven't been that good in the last number of years. Are they a big enough name where they're going to continue on, or is this? I mean, we could take a cop out and say, oh, it's too early to tell. I know it's too early to tell. But does West Virginia have that name cachet in college basketball where they're going to be able to turn this thing around in a quick manner? What do you think?
It's a really good question. I think there are going to be some doldrum years here for West Virginia. And the reason people commit and transfer to West Virginia was the Huggy Bear. That's pretty much it. And or, playing in the Big 12, sure. But you're right, Taylor. I remember people saying that 8-9 Maryland West Virginia matchup, which was the first game of the tournament. I didn't really care. I was like, I'm excited because the tournament's here, but it was probably the least excited I've been about an opener because I just didn't care for either team style of play, and neither of those teams were going to make any sort of noise moving forward. Now, West Virginia, you're right. They haven't been that strong. They haven't been a potent or a real threat, I don't think, in the college basketball landscape. And everyone's been the viral clip that's been going around talking about the other side of Huggy that people hope isn't forgotten is when he's hugging Deshaun Butler when he tears his ACL. Absolutely. Folks, that was in the Final Four. I think that was the last time West Virginia was really a truly potent team. And I'm forgetting, I'm sure they had some years in the top 10, et cetera. But Taylor, I think it's going to be a little bit of time before they are able to pick up their bootstraps and move on. Not everyone can be as fortunate, I guess, as Texas with Rodney Terry. But I think everyone also thought with Terry, like, maybe they're not a Final Four or Elite Eight team, which was incorrect. But I don't think we were ever saying like, okay, Texas isn't just going to completely miss the tournament. Like, what do you think about West Virginia?
Yeah, so they've made the tournament 9 of the last 14 years, which is good. Um, they've been to the Sweet 16 and they went to the Sweet 16 in 15, 17, and 18. So, I mean, I guess in the last few years, I mean, the last 5 years, maybe, it has been 13 years since they went to the Final Four, which makes me feel old as shit since that moment that you're referencing there. So, I'm not sure. The Big 12 has changed so much since Huggins took over there. I mean, it's literally doubled in size. Well, it got cut in half and then doubled, and then yeah, like the whole craziness there.
Insane.
Um, and it's only going to get, from a basketball perspective, it has a real opportunity to only get worse for a school like West Virginia. If an Arizona does come over, if another one of these schools, obviously we know that Texas and Oklahoma are leaving, so that's going to make things a little easier. But if you replace Texas and Oklahoma with like in Arizona and like a San Diego State, it's like, well, geez, did the basketball landscape really get easier, or did it now just maybe get even a little tougher for them? So I think that's going to be interesting to monitor for them. I, I I have a little doom and gloom here. I think West Virginia has a very good fan base. Obviously, they've got a lot of cool traditions. Anytime you play John Denver after your game, you're cool with me. But I could see some problems where they haven't been quite that strong in the last number of years. They're not exactly in metropolitan United States, which isn't the biggest key in the world. But when if you think of the schools that they're surrounded by the best Big Ten schools, the best ACC schools, the best Big East schools, all that right there. So I actually could see them. They're, I think, one poor coaching hire from being basement dwellers in the Big 12 for a number of years here. I think I really believe that at this point, because if a Hall of Fame legend like Bob Huggins was just kind of barely having them hang out or hang along here over the last 5 years, I don't think it was his fault that they were necessarily inconsistent. But I could see, a newer coach or just one poor hire away from them not being very good for a long stretch.
I think you're right, and I would err on that side for sure. How much do we really know about Josh Eilert? This is going to be his time to shine, but coaching basketball is not easy. Taking the reins is not easy, especially when you're thrust into that situation. This isn't John Shire, who's been groomed for this moment, and then Coach K steps down. It's not kind of the same with Hubert Davis. Josh Eilert, we keep making fun of making this joke, beating a dead horse, but like 3 weeks ago, you say, "Hey, you're going to be the head coach."
I mean, look how bad Louisville is. Louisville,
Yeah,
a significantly better basketball school than
yeah.
West Virginia. I mean, again, one bad hire away from things just being shit after a Hall of Fame coach. Almost specifically what happened with Louisville, leaving on. I mean, obviously they had about a 5-year gap in there, but I think what will happen though is West Virginia will have a decent year this year, because it's going to be that kind of rallying. Oh yeah, you still got most of the same players, although the transfer
Players. Yep.
portal is different now, but it is late in the year now. It's a little hard to transfer on July 1st.
Mhm.
Um, and you kind of already have your players. You have a guy who's been with the system for a while, but it's not like he's not going to have nearly the recruiting prowess, obviously, because he doesn't have the name cachet. And then you're just trying to figure it out, just the on the court stuff year one, let alone the off the court stuff too. So I could see them being okay this year. And then like next year and the year after, really taking a deep dive after all these guys leave, and they're not going to refill them with, good players. Really, the key to their success over the next 2 to 3 years is going to be transfer portal. Who can they go find that's a junior that is just looking for some extra playing time, that keeps getting recruited over at the Dukes, the Tennessees, the Arizonas, the UCLAs, the whatever of the world, who keeps getting recruited over and needs some more time. Kind of like a Kirk Kriisa. Kirk Kriisa, I think, actually could have a good year there. They're going to have to find a lot of guys like that who feel like they're a little bit left out. And that's probably how they're going to need to fill their lineup over the next couple of years, which in today's landscape of college basketball, it's kind of funny. It's never been easier to lose your team, but it's also never been easier to rebuild your team at the same time too. So I guess I could see them still being bad for the next couple of years though. In the long story short there.
Well, and we just came off of a season where the Big 12 was probably the best conference in America during the regular season, at
And
least.
again, not getting
Any
likely not
weaker.
getting any easier. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely. And so you look at the programs, you look at the coaches, you look at the players that continue to come in and out. West Virginia, at some point in a couple of years, it might take them, or over the course of these next few years, I think your best bet is, like you said, bringing in these transfers, but trying to have some sort of consistency in terms of winning. I don't foresee them being a NBA mill or pumping out NBA players like Baylor does that, and they're going to the tournament. But Kentucky this past year, they stunk, and yet again, they're getting top 10 guys in the NBA draft. So I don't know. I don't necessarily know what the formula is for West Virginia. And you talk about Eilert. It's kind of funny, Taylor. You're in this position now with your football fandom because you have an unproven commodity after two great quarterbacks in Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre. In West Virginia, you go back all the way to like early 2000s, two great coaches in John Beilein, followed by Bob Huggins. And now the Mountaineer basketball program has always, if there's one thing that was not an issue there, it was the head coach. And now poor Eilert's got to take over those reins. And, I don't know how patient they're going to be with him.
I have two more things on this. One is I hate, really a huge pet peeve of mine. It's like Bob Huggins' daughter went on Twitter and put this like 10-page long like thing like
ride or die.
Don't just don't if you're gonna put out a statement, be like, why do you need to put out a statement? Also, you're just someone's daughter at this point. You don't even, no one's requiring you to put out a statement. Not the school, not Bob, nobody, right? And if you want to put out a statement, you just be like, I know people make mistakes. I still love my dad and think he's a great person and hope that he's remembered well in the eyes of the Mountaineer faithful. That's all. You really don't need to say more than that. Like that's it right there. But number
Did we
two,
get the recycling also? Didn't you say like he's a recycling enthusiast?
I didn't even make it all the way through the end of it. So, yeah, guy loves the planet.
That's from somewhere else. Yeah.
Is he the only person that lives in Morgantown that cares about the environment? Is that
enough to have beer cans in his car? I don't know. Maybe.
But number two is I've always really thought West Virginia's athletic department was super interesting because they're just always on the cusp of like almost being really, really good. You've had a combo of Beilein and Huggins, as well as like Rich Rod and like Holgerson. Like these guys that are good enough to get you to like this almost the summit, but then like never enough to be, and their teams are always cool. They're always fun.
Pat White, Steve
Slayton. They have good colors. Like they have good tradition. So it's like always an athletic department that is like, they could be just a little better than it is, but they just have never been able to get over the hump at any time. And that's I've always thought of West Virginia's athletic department like, I don't know, pretty highly, but it's just weird that kind of you and I have talked about this for in the entirety of our friendship. So like 15 plus years now, right? It's like some schools, teams, whatever, they just are what they are. And so that'll be tested here with Huggins leaving. Is West Virginia's always had a good basketball program and they've always had a good football program, and they have continued somehow to be good at those things. They're never really great for a sustained amount of time. So that'll be tested here. Is West Virginia, can they still be what they are, like a good basketball program, or are they just going to fall off here?
We should get McAfee on the program. You think he'd spare some time?
Hey, speaking of Alaska there, one of my Fairbanks, Alaska golf buddies who's 60-ish grew up in Morgantown, played football at West Virginia. And he, I won't name drop this guy, but he is in a group chat. This is no bullshit. He's in a group chat with Huggy, Saban, and Rich Rod because they all grew up at one point, lived on the same street in West Virginia. That is wild.
There's an article about this one county in West Virginia just producing a buttload of championship coaches.
like we'll be playing golf and he'll hit me on the arm because he knows I'm a huge sports guy, right? He'll hit me on the arm and he'll be like, "Hey, look, I'm talking to Shaden." And I'm like, "That's fucking wild," like that's like you're an idiot. I love this dude, but he's also an idiot too. Like whatever. So I'm like, I can't believe that you just sit here and you like casually go, "Yeah, we're gonna go to Nick's. We're gonna go to Nick's lake house this summer, and Rich and Huggy are gonna come meet." It's like wild conversations to have with this very average regular dude.
Well, Jimbo Fisher's from there too, isn't he? You want
Oh
a
yeah, I
title
think
at
so.
Florida State?
Yeah,
Is he in that
yeah.
group chat also? Probably.
I'll ask next time I see him. So yeah.
Yeah, Adam. Yeah, so a lot going on there for the West Virginia basketball program. I guess I want to get your thoughts on Josh Eilert though, Taylor, before we move on to a different topic here. Um, what do you foresee? I mean, what are the expectations for Josh Eilert? What do you think are reasonable expectations for him? Or what do you, if you're a West Virginia fan, and try and be as neutral as possible, which is kind of oxymoronic to what being a fan is, what can you reasonably expect from Eilert?
I mean, yeah, I guess that's going back to what I said a little bit ago. Is I think if you look at how these things play out a lot, it's you're going to have one kind of okay year, and then some bad ones. Yeah, I guess after that, I don't know. I guess the proper expectations are that you can't really judge a guy on under like 3 or 4 years and letting him get his own recruits and stuff in there. The tough part is Eilert has essentially gone from grad assistant 10, 15 years ago to assistant to like video coordinator. Maybe he's the next Eric Spoelstra.
Maybe.
But I don't know. I personally don't have very high expectations of him. I know that kind of sucks to say, but like I think that this is all kind of being thrust on him quite quickly, given what his background is. I kind of like that. I mean, let me put it this way. I like the choice by West Virginia. It's a little bit of kind of like I don't want to say out of left field, but like they maybe had enough time to vet some other people or figure out where they wanted to go. But at the same time, I kind of like that they're like, hey, fuck it. Let's just let it fly and see how it goes because we might have a diamond in the rough here. And if not, what's the worst that happens? We fire him or we don't even pick up the interim tag or we fire him in 2 years and nobody will blame us, West Virginia, for that. So I kind of like the hire. I guess it's not even really a hire. The
Promotion.
Yeah, there you go. But I don't have any high expectations of him at all. I think this is going to be probably not end very well for him, unfortunately.
I think so too. I could see him being retained though on staff because of the responsibility he's taking on and the situation that he's been put in. There has been some flirting between West Virginia and Andy Kennedy, what I've read. But obviously Andy Kennedy's done a wonderful job at UAB and he did a great job at Ole Miss. I think that would be a perfect fit between West Virginia and Andy Kennedy. But the timing of this all is just not great, right? It's just so awkward. Late June, early July. Transfer windows have pretty much closed. Rosters are kind of set. I'm glad that they're letting these West Virginia kids explore other situations because, like I said, people go to West Virginia for Bob Huggins, and then you never foresee this happening. And so they should be able to get out of their commitment. But it's just such an awkward time because coaches aren't necessarily going to leave, and it's kind of an awkward in the middle type of road program. This isn't Duke or Carolina, where if someone left you're not graduating to West Virginia for the most part. And if you're coaching at a school that's below West Virginia, who knows if the Mountaineers want you immediately and they want to get in. It's all just very messy and complex based on the timing of this, right? Like if this happened right after the Final Four, I think it'd be much better for West Virginia. I obviously never wanted to happen, period. But this is just such an awkward time for all of this to happen.
There are really only like a handful of schools in the country who are equipped to deal with something like this, right? And most of the time they're equipped because their roster is just so talented that it kind of doesn't matter who's coaching. That like a lot of these, when schools go through bad things, like let's take just because we have personal experience with it. Let's take Lute Olson retiring in September or October of like our freshman year of college, right? Well, Russ Pennell, interim guy, comes in and we go to the Sweet 16, and Arizona fans are like, maybe we should hire Russ Pennell as a coach. And it's like, no, Russ Pennell went to the Sweet 16 because they had three and a half NBA players on the roster, right? Not because Russ Pennell was such a good coach that he got them to a like 20-14 record, So that would be my cautionary tale for West Virginia fans is if Eilert goes like 18-14 this year and people are like, yeah, let's hire him. It's like, hold on a second. Hold on. Like, remember that this is who you are, where you're at, like all that type of stuff, where maybe it was just the current talent on the roster, which isn't even that talented of a roster really. But, that's my cautionary tale is we've seen this happen where people are like, yeah, no, go with the interim guy. And it's like, well, maybe that's not the case. For every Texas situation, there's like 99 bad interim coach situations in comparison.
Yeah. Well, here we are, Taylor, heading into the season without, and again, this is over the course of the last couple of years, but no Roy Williams. There's no Coach K. There's no Jay Wright. There's no Bob Huggins. Pillars, no Jim Boeheim. Absolute pillars and institutions on the sidelines that we watched growing up pretty much throughout our entire collegiate basketball career. And
somehow
they're not going to be there.
that cockroach Patino still's hanging around
I love
after
it.
all. Who did way worse shit than anybody else we just talked about, right? And he's
I
still
love
hanging
Patino,
around.
man. That man wins games. I talked about him a couple weeks ago and how, at the very least, he's got St. John's rejuvenated. They got a nice little roster over there in Queens, and I expect them to be a bubble team / make the NCAA tournament. Him and John Calipari, I love them both, man. Snake it till you make it. Screw these haters. I love them. I love both of those coaches. But yeah, crazy stuff already happening in college basketball. The landscape has shifted quite a bit, especially for West Virginia. Speaking of West Virginia here, I'm going to do a quick loose segue. Oscar Tshiebwe, a former Mountaineer, did not get drafted in the NBA draft alongside Adama Sanogo, the Final Four MOP, alongside Drew Timme, who is arguably one of the best big men the collegiate game has ever seen. Azuolas Tubelis, one of our guys, obviously not drafted either. Taylor, it's crazy to see the landscape of the NBA change as much as it has over the course of us watching it. But you look at some of these guys and their names and the accolades that they racked up in college, and it's hard not to think that if they were playing in a different era, if this was the mid 2000s, early 2000s, they are lottery picks. They are in the likes of like an Emeka Okafor, who I think today might go undrafted. But you look at those names, Taylor, and it's pretty jarring to see. And it also, by the way, does not help us in our arguments with folks that don't really care about sports or maybe basketball in particular, when they're like, Adama Sanogo just won the Final Four MOP. Oscar Tshiebwe won National Player of the Year and is a double-double machine. Drew Timme apparently just gets to Final Fours and Elite Eights, and he's amazing. And it's like, so why aren't they drafted in the top 10? It's like, well, they just don't have the potential, the athleticism, the pro game to really translate, at least compared to the other top 10 picks.
So I would put like Timme and Tubelis in the same grouping where they have a similar skill set. Not exactly similar skill set, but they just don't have like an
Like
NBA.
one's significantly better, at least in college.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
No, totally. But I'm just saying, for this discussion, like,
sure,
they would be used the same exact way in the NBA. I guess 6'9", like forwards who are not super athletic, and I'm not just saying that because they're white. Because Tubelis has a bunch of great highlight jams, and is a great floor runner. But if one of those two guys had like the size of like Sanogo, then they would have been drafted. But that's the thing in the NBA today is now when the number one draft pick is 7'6" and can like shoot threes, it's gonna be hard to be a 6'9" guy that isn't a good shooter. Like, I mean, if 7'6" guys are good shooters, well, projecting as good shooters, whatever. And you got the number three.
Think about it though, Taylor. Like how many of the Wemby highlights that we fawn over are him with post moves or backing people down or even dunking.
Right.
Like I think majority of them are this 7'6" freak going between his legs, stepping back like Steph Curry and hitting a three.
God, I hate watching Wemby highlights, to be honest with you, though, because it's like,
Why?
okay, I know. Well, I mean, because they get shoved down our throats, and B, it's like, okay, I don't care about the French U17 team from 2 years. It's just kind of like, yeah, I get it. I'm not hating on Wemby. I understand like how much of a like unicorn is finally used in the right terminology here. He completely is that, and I would have taken him 100 times over someone like a similar uh, size, like a Chet Holmgren last year, something like that. So it's not even like a size thing either. It's just like I I'm excited for what he's going to be in 3 years, and I'm happy and I'm okay with that. I just don't need to see the same 6 to 8 highlights on SportsCenter every day. I could tell you the exact highlight reel that they're showing. So um, but yeah, I mean, I really it goes to show, like we've been saying for many years, is yeah, if you can't shoot the basketball, I mean, Timme can, but those other guys cannot. Not at an NBA level. Timme, I think could, and I think that there is maybe some room for him on a second unit somewhere out there in the world. If Sabonis can be a 10-year, 15-year NBA player, and I'm not trying to just use the Gonzaga comp there, but
The white Gonzaga comp.
White
That's
Gonzaga comp,
deadly.
6'9" power forward,
Yep.
White Gonzaga comp. But I'm just saying, if he can be an all-star level player in the NBA, I'm not saying Timme will be that. I think there is probably room just because Timmy's got probably the best offensive skill set of any of those guys. Sheboy's tough because he just doesn't have the offensive skill set that's going to be necessary for the NBA. And it's great to get 20 rebounds a game in college and all that, but that's hard to do. And he's always been very good at using his body, his positioning, because he really isn't the tallest guy either. He's only like 6'9" too. But when everybody you play is 7'1" in the NBA, there's only so much positioning that some of these guys are just going to out athletic you for rebounds just because they can, and so that's tough for him. Sanogo's just not quick enough, doesn't have the offensive skills. But you're right. Like, I mean, if we bring up like LeBron as an example here, in LeBron's 20 years as an NBA player, you've got this group of 5 guys. I think you said 5 guys, right? That would all have been drafted, like for sure. Maybe Tubelis wouldn't have been drafted even 20 years ago, which is fine because, well, people weren't exactly as pro Euro as they are now either, right? But
Good
these
point.
other guys would have been, yeah. I mean, lottery pick might be a little high to say, but yeah, a first round is an argument for sure. They all would have been drafted for sure. So that's just crazy how long that in the span of one guy's career. So you can either say LeBron's had a really long career, which is accurate, but in the short amount of time in the NBA like world that these guys went from viable, real contending for starting lineup players to like not even going to ever set foot on an NBA court. Just crazy in the last 20 years, not even 20 years. Really, this has been like this for at least 5 years now. So you're talking about 15 years between like 2000 and 2015, how much that changed.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if the age for these folks are helping them either. Drew Timmy's been around in college forever, so is
Well,
Sheboy.
no, because they in 20 years ago, they would have
They
left
would have
early.
gone.
Right.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
good point. It's a very good point. I mean, look at Armando Bacot. He's just
Oh,
gonna be a
oh
Carolina
man.
legend.
1997, that guy's like a top 5 pick in
I
the
know.
draft.
The landscape of the league has changed quite a bit, and it's funny that you bring up the LeBron uh, spectrum as well. But I mean, even a guy like Tyler Hansbrough. Tyler Hansbrough was Drew Timme. Yep, he's got a title under his belt, but super successful, dominated every single game they played. And Hansbrough, I don't know if he was a first round pick. I thought he might have been, but Tyler Hansbrough was like when he got drafted, I think to the Raptors, maybe it was the Pacers. People were like, you know what, he could be a nice contributor. Drew Timme's not even getting any sort of chance, at least in terms of being drafted.
You know what I fear for, and you guys didn't talk about this in the way that I'm about to talk about it, but it's obviously a big point of discussion when it comes to draft prospects. Um, I feel bad for kind of like casual basketball fans because your dads, the dads of the world, only know like the NBA players, right? And they would recognize some of them from college, right? But now it's almost like when PGA Tour and Live Golf and everything came out, like there's so many different avenues to get to the NBA now. It's hard to, if you're just a casual sports fan, there is no casual sports fan that knew twins were going to be taken in the top 5 of the NBA draft this year. You can't tell me there's a single dad who mowed his grass the morning of the NBA draft knew that there were twins from the G League that were going to be drafted in the top 5 that night. And so
It's funny you bring them up, by the way, because I was talking to a listener of the program, CJ, and he was like, well, I've just found out about the Thompson twins about 15 minutes ago.
Yeah, exactly. And he's not a casual sports fan either. No. He's a very big basketball fan. So yeah, it's just tough when you're talking about and this is the only time I'll ever give. I'm always big harp on media members that cover basketball and how bad they are at covering the sport at times and how this is your job and this is what you should be doing. But I will give them a little bit of some grace here to say, yeah, because right now, if you're scouting for the NBA, it's a 24-hour-a-day job because there's now not a league on earth that there isn't like an NBA prospect coming out of. And that's got to be tough for scouts, for, obviously people like us who are really big, huge basketball fans, but we can't watch every game across, every timeline in the world. So I think that's an interesting this topic of discussion coming on right now, because you brought up, well, yeah, Taylor Subi. Why wouldn't like a guy like Oscar Tshiebwe get drafted? It's like, well, because have you heard of the twins from the G League, or have you heard from these 8 guys from Europe, or have you heard from it's just going to be really difficult. And it's not going to get any easier to monitor where all of this is coming from. And I mean, for good reason. It's in general, it's a good thing. The quality of the game, the quality of the NBA should always be on the way up because of that, right? Because now you're getting, I mean, look at who the best player in the world is, right? The 2 best players in the world, both Euro guys, right? So, and the game is only better because of that. But boy, it's going to be tough as your casual college basketball sports fan to be like, okay, so wait a second. So Drew Timme, who's just dominated college basketball for the last few years, doesn't even get drafted. Explain that to me. And we're never going to be able to explain that to someone who doesn't know, I guess.
Well, and I think the 5 years thing that you had mentioned is really spot on, because right now I think I could say we know what Drew Timme can do at the college level. We've seen him night in and night out. You have not seen this guy, Giannis Antetokounmpo. You've not seen this guy, Nikola Jokic, right? You haven't seen those two, but there's a reason they were drafted. And look, Jokic was fine. Jokic was a second rounder during a Taco Bell commercial, but there's a reason why a Luka Doncic, who some are saying, no, he's just this pudgy guy from Slovenia who, we're getting grainy footage of. There's a reason why we got Giannis at 15. I think Giannis is the perfect example where people are like, man, you can still get value at 15. Why are we drafting Giannis? Fast forward 5 years or however long it's been since he's been drafted. That's why. Like, that is the long-term impact that a Giannis Antetokounmpo can have. And I'm not saying these other guys can't. Who knows what could happen? I never thought Nikola Jokic would have this type of impact, but it's easier now to explain as we see some of these examples of projects not only panning out, but becoming all-time greats. Nikola Jokic is an all-time great. Giannis Antetokounmpo is an all-time great. Luka Doncic is on his way to being an all-time great. It's pretty wild. It really is. And you know what? Here's another example with that Doncic thing, and it pains my heart, but who went number 1 overall? It was the big man, 7-footer DeAndre Ayton, who's still really good. But you redraft, everyone's taking Luka number 1.
Yep. Well, and this year is tough too, and so maybe I'll table my thoughts for a year on this, because the gravity of Wembanyama is so extreme this year that, like, look at Bilal Coulibaly, right, the 7th pick in the draft. Dude is the teammate of Wembanyama.
No idea.
Nobody knows a single fucking thing about this guy. And so, like, nobody in the world has watched more Metropolitans 92 games than this year specifically, right? and nobody knows who the second best player on the team was, and he got drafted 7th overall. So maybe I need to walk that back a little bit because the gravity of Wembanyama was so extreme this year. But I mean, still, it just goes to show that like it's going to be tough as a casual sports fan, as any sports fan, but especially as a casual sports fan, to monitor who's good, why they're good, where they're getting drafted, all this type of stuff.
Well, so you mentioned the gravity of Wembanyama, but it was always funny to me when they were comparing him to LeBron James, because I remember my parents, like, they knew who LeBron James was in high school because he was on ESPN 24/7. And I would hazard to say a lot of people knew who, like, even casuals, less than casuals. My wife is less than a casual. She doesn't care about sports. And so when Wembanyama got drafted, she asked me, "So was this expected?" And I was like, it was probably the most expected. I mean, you could say other number one overall picks like Anthony Edwards was pretty expected, but that's just because of other people. But I'm like, if Wembanyama was in other draft classes, he would be the most expected number one draft pick, maybe with the exception of LeBron James. But I was saying to her, I was like, people knew this was coming about a year, maybe 2 years ago, when teams win the NBA lottery. There's usually where's one or two guys going to go? Like, is Zion going to go here? I don't know. Even last year, Paolo Banchero, Jabari Smith, who's going to go number one? The second the Spurs won the lottery, everyone was like, "So Victor, you're heading to San Antonio." And I'm like, that doesn't happen. Like, you don't just say you're heading there.
Well, I liked who represented the Spurs at the lottery this year. I can't remember, like an assistant GM or something like that. But they were like, "So what do you expect from Victor Wembanyama?" And he was like, "Well, we don't know who we're going to pick yet." I thought that was a great, very in touch answer. Yeah, it was a great in touch and funny answer. But the other thing is too is just, I mean, sports coverage has just changed, right? So when LeBron was coming around, we didn't have social media, we didn't have we had TV. We didn't have streaming services, and magazines. Sports Illustrated still showed up to your house once a month. Sports Illustrated for Kids was still showing up really when LeBron was coming around, And so, yeah, of course our parents knew about, and everybody knew about this guy. He was on the Today Show, on ABC News Tonight, on ESPN, and on the magazines that showed up to your house. And people still kind of read the newspaper too. So, I mean, you only had like literally a handful of outlets to like learn about these people. Phones weren't a thing, or smartphones weren't a thing, of course. So now it's like, well, yeah, why would our wives and girlfriends give a shit about Victor Wembanyama? We've got 17 streaming services, and we all have laptops and 7 TVs and all this type of stuff, where it's like, well, yeah, if Subi's watching ESPN, I'm just gonna watch Bravo on my phone or on my iPad or in the other room, which I'm not trying to generalize here, but that's what's happening in our household pretty much. So yeah, so it's kind of like, of course that people aren't going to be as in touch with that type of stuff today, because there's just all of your entertainment options are just a little more easily grasped, let's call it.
It's so true. I'm watching Windhorse memes, and Rachel's watching like the Grimace Challenge, which I just found out about, which is kind of funny. But that's what I'm.
Yeah, I have no idea what that is. I don't know what that is. Yeah,
it's just kids drinking. I mean, it's like Gen Z drinking the Grimace shake from McDonald's and then just completely passing out, pretending to be passed out. I don't know. It's crazy.
That did come across my feed. Now
I'm sure you've seen it.
I'm retroactively understanding what was happening there. Yeah. No, I'm with you. So
that's that. You know what I do miss also, by the way? Fran Fraschilla ran so Jonathan Givony could run, because I trust Givony in terms of his analysis and what he says about foreign players, international players. But I do miss Fran Fraschilla at draft night, when it would be like he may have covered Jokic. I would love to hear if he had a sound clip on Jokic, but I miss him on draft night being like, yeah, this guy, he's about 10 years away from being 20 years away from being like 3 years away from being a rotational player for this team. So this is a great value at 38. It's like, Jesus, Fran.
Frank Nicolettina is like, yeah, like, no, guys, this is a great pick. This is a great pick. Yeah. I mean, Fran Fraschilla is like, he's kind of like the Celine Stoudemire of draft analyst. He was just like one generation short of like what would have been just the prime time. Dude wouldn't even need to be in America. He could have just moved to Europe at this point and could have just lived there. Never would have had to go back and forth and try and convince us about, he's on his way out. And he's like, oh, and now someone like Victor Wembanyama comes up where I don't even have to explain that this guy is good. Yeah, you're totally right. Poor Fran. Just about 10, 15 years early.
He could have gotten the Windhorse treatment, get flown out to Paris, have a few weeks there on vacation, interview arguably the greatest superstar since LeBron James. But sadly, he's covering stuff for us. You know what? I love Fran Fraschilla. I love him on Wednesday or Monday nights. I think he's usually alongside John Shambi talking Big 12 hoops. So I'm glad we got Fran all to ourselves.
I can't wait for the Brian Windhorse like 30 for 30 to come out in like 30, 40 years. How does this guy get to follow LeBron for his entire career? And then when LeBron's phasing out, he's there. ESPN's like, why don't you go follow Wemby for the next 20 years too? It's like, how did Wendy of all of these people get like the number one analyst or like reporter job in basketball?
He's fascinating, man, because I think Windhorse to me is marrying that balance, or he has that balance of like a Tim Legler, who I love because he's strictly ball talk. He is strictly talking about hoops and he's breaking down film like people who love the game want them to break it down. But Wendy also has this panache of like the flair and the ridiculous comments like a Stephen A. Smith or a Perk even, where he's like, you know what? I'm going to break down what's happening with the Utah Jazz, and then I'm going to add on to it the finger meme. And it's like, I don't know. There's something about Wendy that is just appealing when it comes to this type of stuff.
Speaking of all these analysts, and I know we're just going completely off the college basketball radar here in a little ways, but so glad they got rid of that Jay Williams, Max Kellerman, like Jalen Rose, whoever the hell else was on that show. Like, Keyshawn was Key.
I don't know. I didn't really tune into that.
No, all these shows they have are so dumb now. I'm glad that they're purging like half of the people that they have on staff there now, because it's become such a joke to watch any of these shows. So, but Jay Williams, has anyone ever liked him as an analyst in any like way, shape, or form?
I mean, look, and I know you're a Heat fan, but the second Jay Williams said Jimmy Butler was harder to guard than Kevin Durant, I almost threw my phone.
Yeah, no, Perk sucks.
I love Perk though. Yeah, I mean, he doesn't make good points.
Yeah, I love JJ Redick just because of his reactions to whatever Perk is doing. But yeah, sorry, I took us even further off.
No. I hear you. I just think it's like Legler is my number one guy, but I understand kind of why they bury him at 11 p.m. Eastern with Scott Van Pelt, because people don't want that. People don't want to talk about spacing and ball cutting and screens and how like this one screen on the weak side 15 seconds or I don't know, like 10 seconds into the shot clock opens up a wide open shot with 5 seconds left. They don't want that. They want, Kevin Durant, you're a big baby for going on Twitter Spaces, and then Kevin Durant chirping back at Jason McIntyre. That's what they want.
I did kind of think that was hilarious.
It is funny. Like, it's not mutually like, I'm a sucker for that type of stuff too, but that's why I think Windhorse is great. He toes that balance.
There you go.
All right, TD. This was a great episode back, man. I'm glad we dove into it. Some good shop talk here in the dog days of summer.
Can I offer you one piece of trivia here?
Oh, yeah.
And that is, which one, you probably already saw this story, but which one of Manute Bol's kids just committed to Florida? Okay. Is it Madut, Abuk, Ayak, or Chris, or John?
I'm gonna say Chris Bull.
John Bull just committed to Florida. So, I don't know where. So Manute has kids with 2 wives. Rest in peace. We could tell that there was a very line in the sand that was drawn up when we were naming kids traditional Sudanese names or John and Chris. So yeah, congrats to John Bull, brother of Bol, son of Manute, on committing to Florida here recently.
here's the what's the combination that we're going to go with now. We'll just say Bolden. How about that?
Okay, there you go.
Bolden. John Bolden, Todd Golden, now we're completely off the rails. Just marry the two last names. You can do that. Taylor, great to have you back, my man. We will be, no, you know what? Why don't we take next week off? It's the 4th. And then I'm going to Colorado actually for vacation.
Dude, good for you. Yeah, it's we've had a pretty good year so far here in Phoenix. We had pretty much avoided 100-degree days for the most part. And we just skipped like the 103 degrees in Phoenix. If you've been to Phoenix, is really no big deal. It's, it's hot, but it's no big deal. So we skipped pretty much from 98 degrees to 111 degrees. So that's where we're at now. So I'm jealous of your Colorado trip there. That's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I'm sure your pregnant wife is loving that weather as well right now.
Oh, yeah. No, 113 and no real ability to go anywhere. It's a great combination. I'll tell you what.
I believe it.
So,
I believe
and someone's got to finish the nursery at the same time too, like I said.
That's the second time you brought it up.
I know. Well, yeah, you should see how many times my wife brings it up per day. So two is what we get to generally by about the time the first coffee cups finished. So, and that's at about 7:30 a.m. So you can only imagine how many more added on across the next 14 to 16 hours from there.
Well, tell her I apologize for stealing an hour out of your time. I'm not going to apologize for the hour I gave the theater goers, but I will thank you for listening as always, and we will catch you next time here on Theater and College Hoops.